The good news is you can do this. And I'm going to encourage you, whatever you've been through, my prayers are with you, my thoughts are with you.
Now, this is a third video about keys to healing from sexual trauma. I would love you to check out the first one and the second one. This is the third one, and it's all connected, so it'll be helpful to just listen to all of them, and that way you can better understand this whole journey. The good news is that anyone who suffers sexual trauma can heal and will heal with the right support, which is really important, and in the right environment. Before I continue in this video, I want you to like it. I want you to subscribe to my videos. I want you to press that notification bell, and I want you to follow me on social media at Ask Dr. Rolla, AskDrRolla. This video is a final one in the mini series about keys to healing from sexual trauma. This point here is so critical and so powerful, and it can take a while before a victim of sexual trauma gets to this place. And this is when the victim of sexual trauma is now able to tell their story. There is power in them being able to tell the story about what happened to them. And when you review part 1 and part 2, you will see how those factors that I discussed in the first 2 videos lays the foundation for being able to tell the story. The victim of sexual abuse needs to be given permission to tell their story of pain however they want to and when they want to, at their own comfort level. As a therapist, I will never force my patient to disclose information about their trauma that they don't feel ready to disclose. What I do in therapy is that I open up the opportunity for the person who has suffered trauma to express themselves. But most of the initial work is to create an environment where they feel comfortable to be able to do so. I would encourage anyone who has suffered sexual trauma to find a trauma specialist to work with on this particular one. Actually, in all of these steps. But in this particular one, you're going to understand a little bit more why. That story can be told in bits. That story may be told over weeks, months, or years. As information comes up that they feel comfortable in sharing. That story must be told. That yoke and that burden of shame must be taken off this person, and they break that yoke of shame by telling their story. It builds confidence. They're not letting somebody else tell it anymore. They're not letting the legal system tell it, the police tell it. They're telling it themselves because they're the ones who've experienced the pain. They're the one who've experienced the trauma. And also in this video, part of telling the story is having a witness, and that's where a trauma specialist is important. A critical part of healing from sexual trauma is having a witness, somebody who is providing empathy, somebody who is providing validation, and somebody who's creating an environment where those painful emotions and experiences can be processed and held together. When I'm working with a victim of trauma, if I notice that we're talking about trauma and the emotions are getting a little bit too much, or they're feeling overwhelmed, we bring it back and we begin to tone it down and we bring them to a more comfortable place. So I am constantly gauging their affect and how they're doing to see if they can tolerate it, because I don't want them to be overwhelmed even with their own story. I want it to be shared in a way that can bring healing rather than take them down and make them to decompensate or take them into a crisis situation. So we need a witness. Who is a witness? A therapist. If there's no therapist, or even with a therapist, there's still family members who are witness, who are saying, yes, you have a right to share your story. You've been through a lot. You are a survivor. You're a fighter. Say it the way you want to say it. We're not going to edit it. We're not going to be so concerned about what others think to where you cannot say what you feel. You are giving the victim of sexual trauma the permission and creating an environment where that person can be validated, that their pain and their feelings of shame and the sense of sadness is not crazy, is not their fault, which is how many victims of trauma feel. So bearing witness is critical. The therapist, the loved one who is supportive, validates, empathizes. If I went through this too, I would feel the same way. That's empathy. Supports. When the victim expresses how they feel, they give them room to express it, and they may engage them in a positive experience later to validate what was being said as normal. It is normal for you to feel that way, and it's normal for you to bring it up. And in this environment, even when you bring it up, we're going to celebrate that. That's a sign of strength. That is not a sign of weakness. And in terms of bearing witness, validation is so important, even in the place of silence. Many victims of trauma are sitting with silence, with inadequate vocabulary to express their pain. What about you sitting with them as a loved one, a family member, without saying anything, not interrupting their thoughts, as long as they're safe, and saying, tell me what you need, I'm here for you. And there are times in therapy when we leave that space to just be quiet so that the patient can take in and feel supported, even that quietness. Because even though they're not talking, they're still processing. So this is the part 3, the final part, where we are now in a place where the victim is given the permission to share their story, and they have a remarkable, reliable, dependable, caring witness who is demonstrating exact opposite of what the abuser demonstrated. And as that relationship grows between them and the witness, and the story is being told, the person who suffers sexual trauma, not just their victim, their survivor too, internalizes that experience of telling their story and dealing with that witness. And that solidifies and crystallizes the sense that they're worthy. These are powerful, powerful things. As you can see, we're not looking for speed here. We're not looking for people to heal in 2-3 weeks. When we want people to heal, we don't give it a timeline. We don't say, oh, it should be done by now. We let every individual go through their own process. And then one day, things just look different. They look through the lenses now of hope and joy, not through the lenses of abuse. They are assertive. They can express their needs. They know how to. And they're much more powerful in spite of what they've experienced. And they also know how to surround themselves with people who are going to validate them rather than people that are going to diminish them. I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. Bye now.